my job here is to help bring light to the harms that these teens are experiencing, and the fact that the way the company talks about them, in my experience, is misleading. It does not need to be this way, right? Instagram is standing right next to them as these things are happening, and they should be able, and I know because I built these kinds of things for 6 years, they should be able to turn and say, can you please help me with this?
Right.
And then get help with whatever's happening for them. And today, that is not the case.
A former Meta employee and Instagram consultant is warning about the risks teens face on social media. Arturo Bejar is his name. He says he told company leaders, and I don't just mean mid-level, I'm talking CEO Mark Zuckerberg and COO Sheryl Sandberg, that Instagram was harmful, especially to children, and he was witnessing it firsthand. The Wall Street Journal reports Bejar flagged that his teen daughter and her friends received unsolicited sexual photos and were harassed on the platform since they were 14 years old. In one email to Instagram's head, Bejar warned, quote, 1 in 8 users younger than 16 said they experienced unwanted sexual advances on the platform in the past week, and the problems still exist. However, a Meta spokesperson denied Bejar's claims, saying in part, quote, every day, countless people inside and outside of Meta are working on how to help young people stay safe online. Working with parents and experts, we've introduced over 30 tools to support teens and their families in having safe, positive experiences online. All of this work continues. I want to welcome Frances Haugen. She is the whistleblower who warned that Facebook knew its practices were amplifying hate, misinformation, and political unrest back in 2021. She's also a member of the Issue One's Council for Responsible Social Media, a cross-partisan group calling for social media reform. Frances, I am so glad you're here. When I read this Wall Street Journal article, you were the first person I thought of. What do you think of this guy's story?
You know, when we look back on the history of social media, we are going to remember this month, because this is the month when the tide turned.
Really?
So Arturo Bejar was the first engineering manager at Facebook for trust and safety. He came back in 2019 because his 14-year-old daughter was getting sent inappropriate images, like you can imagine. She was getting sexual messages that were just completely inappropriate. And given his past experience, he thought, they must just not know. Like, Facebook is responsible. They would act if they knew. And so he went back for a 2-year consulting contract. And when all the news came out around my disclosures and he saw their response, he said, we need to document that they knew and they didn't act. And so he sent he did surveys of the users, and they found things like 1 in 8 girls under the age of 16 received an unwanted sexual contact in the last 7 days. That's not ever, it's in the last week.
And when he went to Mark Zuckerberg, when he went to Instagram, they did nothing.
So he sent the emails to executives, and he documented who responded, who met with him, who didn't, so that you could see. And then what the most shocking part was, they told him, don't distribute this information internally, discuss it only in the hypothetical.
Wow. All right, well, fast forward. Sure. Today, Meta is being sued by over 36 states' attorneys generals who are alleging both Instagram and Facebook are deceptive and dangerous to kids' health.
Yep.
Now, we asked Meta about the lawsuit, and they said they are working every single day to keep kids safe online. Do you think there's any chance these lawsuits are leading to changes that the company is actually making to make things safer?
So we've seen a pattern with Facebook, which is that Facebook doesn't change until it's forced to change. For example, many of the safety policies that they point at and say, we launched these safety features for kids, they didn't do that until the UK passed an online safety law for kids back in 2021. One of the things that we should expect is that if they lose these lawsuits, and remember, we now have a paper trail that says they testified before Congress that they thought their products were safe, but they knew. And if you'll notice, Arturo didn't testify before the Consumer Protection Committee, which is what I did. He testified before the judiciary. And just yesterday, a bipartisan group of senators asked Facebook for every piece of communications related to the emails that he referred to in his testimony.
Oh, hot damn.
Is that not amazing?
Well, it's something. Then if you're talking to parents today, and they're looking at their kids, their teens on these platforms, what are you telling them?
You know, it's incredibly hard to be a parent today. Remember, parents didn't grow up with these technologies. There's all this peer pressure saying you have to be on these platforms.
I know it. I live it.
One thing I always reassure parents is they've done studies on kids who wait to go online, go on social media, and they don't report being any less lonely than kids who are on these platforms. But the second thing is there's things we can do today to blunt a little bit of that damage. It's things like kids' phones need to charge in the parents' bedroom. You know, it's going to take probably a couple of years for this to play out, even if it's successful. And kids are growing up right now. And so having the hard conversations with your kids, knowing what they're using, maybe even waiting a little longer, even though it's going to be hard, these are all things we can do today while we wait for justice.
I want to talk about a different topic. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Meta has now made it easier to post political ads that question the 2020 election, that say it was rigged, it was stolen. Meta is citing, we should do this. This is about free speech. When you worked at the company, you were literally on the misinformation team. Why would the company take this position now?
Well, I think one of the things to remember is Facebook fired a large number of its safety professionals in the last year. Remember, safety is one of these things where if you want to look more profitable, you can basically get these unpaid debts in the form of making your product less safe. And no one will know because we don't have any transparency laws today.
You also don't have any rules, right? You can't put a political ad saying those things on NBC.
Totally. And one of the things that I'm very worried about is in the last year, Facebook has very openly said, we're not going to carry as much news. You know, people don't like seeing the news. It's a downer. We're not going to carry as much news. But they didn't just tell us what counts as news and what doesn't count as news. All we know is that publishers are saying we get 70, 80% less traffic than we did before. So just think about this for a moment. So you're allowed now to target people with ads to say the election was rigged, and you're not going to let actual news sources distribute. Like, if you're going to talk about freedom of speech, you should really talk about freedom of speech in a more comprehensive way, especially when it actually could endanger people's likelihood to vote, people's willingness to work with the process.
I have one more question on danger, right? The next big thing is AI. And all sort of the big godfathers of AI are saying, we're not going to make the mistakes social media did. But we've seen in the last month, 2 high schools in this country where students have used AI to create nudes of their classmates.
My God. Yeah.
How concerned are you about this next frontier of AI and safety?
I think it's going to be, you know, it's one of these things where we have to actually have some cultural norm shifts where it's sad to say, but you have to have things like really severe consequences at the school level because these technologies are out there. Like, we are going to see this continue to be a larger and larger problem. But it's one where these technologies exist around the world, but we don't see repetitions in this behavior. And so we have to start saying, if the way we're actually going to have continue safety is by having community action, we have to have communities have these conversations, have the norms, and have consequences because the technology is now out in the world.
Well, we need your help. Frances, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.